Hello, freshmen. It's time for our last day, day 4 of Settling the West Notes. So I had to wear the cowboy hat one more time. I know, it's so much fun. Okay, so we're going to put the cowboy hat aside. And what we're going to talk about today is the end of Settling the West. We get some changes. One big change is Native American land is going to be divided up and given away to whites again. Now, this sounds a lot like what you talked about in 8th grade. Well, it's going to happen again, especially in the state of what is now Oklahoma. So we're going to start with Native Americans, again, by the Dawes Act, being forced to give up their land. They were forced to become farmers, which a lot of them did not want to do. One of the really awful things, and I didn't put this in the slide, and it's not going to be on the test, but it kind of explains things a little bit, is not only did they want to change how Native Americans lived and acted, they also wanted to alter their children. So Native American children were often taken away by social workers and shipped back east to Indian schools, where they would be taught how to basically live a white man's life. And probably the most famous person to do this, if you know your sports, is Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe was taken from his Oklahoma home as a kid and shipped back to Pennsylvania, Carlisle Indian School. And while there, he met a very influential man named Pop Warner. And he became one of the early stars of football and also an Olympic athlete, winning the decathlon in the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. So again, one of the other big changes is not only do they want to affect Native Americans of the current generation, they wanted to affect the next generation of Native Americans and essentially cleanse them of the Indian. Okay, that's what they kind of said. All right, well, with the Dawes Act, Indian land was now being appropriated to individual Indians, but they also were going to give away some Indian land to whites. And in 1893, we will get the Oklahoma Land Rush. Now, we'll probably watch a clip of it in class from the movie Far and Away with Tom Cruise. But basically, and you'll see in the picture here, men and women, families, lined up, and at the sound of a cannon fired at noon, they rushed, and they simply charged, as you can see in the picture, and they claimed plots of land in northern and central Oklahoma that had been marked off by the government. Now, for those of you who know your Oklahoma football history, some people went early. Some people snuck out the night before. They claimed plots of land, which was illegal and actually could have gotten you killed by vengeful settlers. But these people, and a lot of people claim ancestry, were called Sooners. So if you know your Oklahoma football, you know that the team in Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, is called the Sooners. Those who actually, followed the rules and left when the cannon fired and told them to were called Boomers. So if you know your Oklahoma fighting song, it's called Boomer Sooner, and they run that little carriage out on the field, that little Conestoga wagon. I know. If you're not an Oklahoma fan, you're like, really, Mr. Malecki? I know. But that's how they get that nickname. So the Oklahoma Sooners got their name from the people who left early on the land rush. All right, farmers, they're going to have a tough time after they get there in the beginning. In the beginning, the Great Plains, well, first of all, let's go back a little bit. The Great Plains had a reputation from the early 1800s of being the Great American Desert. People said nothing could grow there, there were wild animals, and you could never plant anything. If you planted any crop, it would automatically die. We found out that wasn't totally true, but what they were referring to was the fact that the Great Plains was susceptible to droughts. And so when settlers first arrived, for the first 2 decades of major settler arrival in the 1870s and 1880s, we had banner years, good years in terms of rainfall. However, by the end of the 1880s, or early part of 1890s, the rain stops and the Great Plains start to go through a drought. And so this drought is going to harm our farmers because so many of them have spent what little money they had to get new plows, new seed, more land. And once the economy drops and once those crop prices fall, they're going to lose a lot of money. So by the time 1900 rolls around, our farmers are in a pretty desperate situation in the South. In the Great Plains, along with the ones in the South, but that's a different story we already talked about. So one of the things we'll talk about, not in this next unit, but the unit after, is farmers are so distressed by this lack of economic clout that they will form the first viable third party in over 50 years. They will form the Populists. So when we get to our Unit 4, we'll talk about the Populists and why they were formed in more detail. Okay? All right. Conclusion. People came to the West for a variety of reasons. But the big thing, they all sought opportunity. They all wanted opportunity to improve their lives, whether it be through mining, farming, or ranching. Okay? And the settlement of the West, as we know, is going to greatly affect the Plains Indians. It's going to essentially end their 1,000-year culture on the Great Plains, and it's essentially going to force them onto reservations. And we know that many Native Americans still to this day live on those reservations. Okay? So this is it for Settling the West Notes. We may do a review video, but I'll let you know if we do. But signing off for the last time in Settling the West, Mr. Malecki. Our next unit, we will go back to the East and we will talk about America's industrialization. Have a good day.